Hey, are you an artist? Do you draw, paint, sketch? What are you doing with your artwork? Is it hanging in your living room, your kitchen, your bedroom? Is it in a book? Well, today we're going to talk to an artist who has married her talents for writing and artwork. Today, we are going to meet a woman who wrote a book called Poco Uno, The Magical Kingdom. And her kingdom comes to life in her artwork. My name is Vin Dacquino, and today we are going to talk to Diane Vinopoll. Diane, let's talk writing. How are you?
I'm good, Vinny.
Great. It is a pleasure to have you on the show.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here.
You and I have been working closely together. I am, as you know, a great fan of your artwork and your writing.
Thank you.
Tell me where all of this began. Were you born writing and drawing?
No. Oh, the writing part is a big surprise to me.
Okay.
And I'm thrilled to death that I've achieved what I have with the writing. The artwork, on the other hand, I've always been in love with, and I started as a young lady in grade school, high school, and I would always be drawn to it. Unfortunately, I married very young and had 4 children by the time I was 23, so my artwork was put very much on the back burner for a while. And not until they grew did I start getting back into it. And when I decided that I was going to soon retire, I started fantasizing again about writing my stories. And I love children, I love animals, so it all culminates for me very easily that way.
Now, you write children's books.
I do. I always, having young children around, even now, I have 13 grandchildren.
Wow.
So
now, you had a total of 5 children, right?
5 children
Wow.
and 13 grandchildren.
Whoa.
And the thing is, so I'm around the youth, and there's nothing better than youth for inspiration.
Did any of their books inspire you? I mean, did you look through their books? You must have been a very busy mother.
I was busy. There were certain, characters, favorites I had over the years for the children and their favorites, but no, my mind was always in the heads of what would it be like in writing little stories about the animals I had.
Mm-hmm.
I
now you
remember
have
that very
now
vividly.
the 5 children are grown.
Yes.
But you have some children of your own, 4-legged children. How many dogs do you have?
I started with only one, and my soulmate, who I dedicated my book to, is a little Andy. And since then, I now acquired, not by me looking for it, but by incidents, I had at one time 6.
6 dogs.
Yeah, for one reason or another, a rescue situation, whatever, and I had my hands full. So I always fantasized about what was going on, their personalities, and animals to me are people. And that's how I came up with Poco Uno in the book, because I think it was...
Now, is Poco Uno a dog?
Is a dog.
It's a dog. And this is your book.
Yes.
It's called Poco Uno and the Magical Kingdom.
Yes.
And it's about a dog. So tell me a little bit, sum this up a little bit. What is the story about?
Well, first of all, I fell in love with the setting for the book. The Fairyland story was always in the back of my head. I had gone for a trip out to the Grand Canyons and all of that, and was like in awe of the beauty. And I said, this is where my Fairyland should be. And that's what I did. I decided that's where it was going to be. And it's a story about a fairyland. Because I love whimsy, I love all of that, and I believe in the spiritual world, of course.
Me too.
So, this all married very easily, because when I also started writing or trying to write, I did a lot of research. And one of the things I did was I delved into, someone had told me, don't ever write anything that is not believable. So I went into the area of there and found some very interesting things about the Indians and the time frame of when this story was going to start. So I found the camaraderie at that time when the Spanish settlers were there. It was in the 1400s, so it was before the Americas were born. And those times there was a lot of camaraderie between the Indians and the Spanish settlers. And also the Spanish connotation that's in this book. Poco uno means little one in Spanish. And so I carried that through in the story, a little bit of the Spanish. But it's about a story of a fairyland that was, the king was brought there as a little boy, didn't know anything about his past, and he was trained to start his own kingdom by one of the elders of his mystical clan. Nothing more than that. He made friends only with the Indians and did his good deed. It was a good fairyland. And until later on, things started evolving in the story. The Indian chief that he befriended died. And actually, that's how Poco uno came. Poco uno was a gift sent to him by the Indian chief, who he loved and adored for many years and who died in his arms. He said he was sending him a gift. So this is how the mystery all starts. The Periwinkle and Thunder were the two fairies I chose to use in the story. And they discovered this gift. And in the fairyland, in fact, in one of the first illustrations that we're talking about, it has a big sphere in the middle of town. And this is how the fairies look and answer the plea for help from children and people young at heart. And they would go out and try to give them advice, you know, and all of that. So one day she's looking through the sphere, and that's how they would make touch with the mortal world. There was a plane wreck, and she was getting a drawing sensation that there was something there, a mystery or something in this plane. So that's how it all starts. They go to the plane, they discover this little puppy, a little white puppy, and they bring it back to the kingdom. And they're all saying, what could this be? So as time goes by, the dog turns into a superhero. And I use the characters in my book to bring this about. And, you know, the story goes on. Eventually, in the story, there's always the dark side in the story, right, that's searching and trying to cause havoc. And he hears from the elders that there was going to be a meeting where he never was told about his past. So eventually in the story, they go and they're back to the elders and they find the mystery of what his past is. And that's where the story goes. It's a big surprise at the end, what had happened, how it all culminates, and the mystery unfolds.
And there's pigs in the story.
Well, I used little Pancetta. I did use Pancetta, who is a little pink pig. She was being harassed by the big black pigs who hung out behind the cafe in the town. And this caused little Poco to transform, sort of like the Hulk, from the little white dog he was into this superpower dog who's ready for armor, and I think he's on the cover. But he has many, many powers and many, many things he can do. So I used him as the medium to change. And naturally, in the end of the story, after all this mystery involves, this is where Periwinkle, they go out to the broken plain where they find the little puppy dog. and there's no life on the plane, and yet they find this little bundle of a dog who's the only thing moving there and bring it back to the kingdom. And little by little, the Indian chief visits the king, and they know it's the gift, and he has so many superpowers. So that's what this illustration is about.
So what, in a nutshell, does this story teach us or tell us?
Well, first of all, it's a great, it's focused on heartwarming, good feelings, friendship, the friendship between the king and the Indian chief that reaches beyond the barriers of the mortal world. It's into the spiritual world. Also the fact that the dog, now we touch on the harassment, and I use the tools of the little pig and the fairies to address bullying in the story, which is great. Being a grandmother, I like to give all these good pearls of wisdom
Yep, and you know
through
that
my
bullying
readers.
is something that I have been working with and working on. Bullying makes me crazy.
Yeah.
It's a big issue now.
It's
in
a
school.
very big issue, and the thing is, my mind went ballistic on this factor, because the little pink pig, who in my life I thought she was wonderful, she's taken under the arm of Periwinkle and Thunder, and they encourage her. They took her and said, "You can be whatever you want to be."
Yeah.
And now,
you can be.
there's a whole story there. She's encouraged to do things. She always admired the flowers in the fields, and Thunder actually got her a paint set, and she becomes a booming artist. And so this is the examples, and I'm trying to, give to the children, is that you don't know what you can accomplish, until you try. And that's what the little Pancetta did.
Tell me about the marriage of art and writing.
Well, that's unfolding for me, because the writing is new for me, but the art was always there. And I learned that one thing that, and I've studied art now as an adult for a long while, and the tools that my instructors have given me for art is like to reach inside yourself, to create an atmosphere of what you're doing in your artwork. Well, it's the same thing in writing.
Yep.
And that was such a wonderful experience when I joined the writers group, because all the things I was learning for years about the art are exactly what are the components in writing. Using the atmosphere that the story's in, describing the atmosphere, using dialogue, all these tools paint the picture. That's why it was so easy for me when you asked me to do a few of your illustrations, because you gave me your copy.
Speaking of that, when I saw Poco Uno, and when I saw the illustrations that are in Poco Uno, I fell in love. I said, yes. This is what I've been looking for. My books are generally not illustrated, but I was ready to do a project on Sybil Ludington.
Right.
And the idea was to present Sybil Ludington as a grandmother. For many years, there's been a misconception. It was believed that Sybil Ludington was the mother of 6 children. She was not.
Right.
She was the grandmother of 6 children. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to create a story, and I wanted to have Sybil be real, be warm, be human. And I needed an artist that could help portray that. I found that artist in you. And what I did is I went to you and I said, look, here's what I want to try to do. And what I want to try to do for our audience today is to help them understand the partnership. So I went to you and said, look, I'd love for you to illustrate this book. And I have an idea of what I want to do. Now, what did I say that helped you create what I loved. Here is the image of Sybil as seen through Diane Vinopoll. And the idea was to create her as a grandmother and to create the 6 grandchildren she had.
Right.
So tell me about, what did you do after I spoke with you?
Okay, first of all, my first trip is always to look and see. I wasn't familiar with the story of Sybil Ludington, so I went and took out whatever books there were. And I glanced through them and I saw what you had said, that this was, you know, they were very vague, they were not authenticated really. And I said, well, I'm going to try to bring the human part, the warmth of the grandmother relating to the children on the floor. I mean, there were 5 of them or
6,
something,
yep.
6 the
And
kids there.
The 2 girls, I love the way you put the 2 girls on the right and left side of the grandmother.
The grandma,
Yep.
yeah. Well, I think that was in your writing.
And now that's another thing that I was very pleased. When I told you that I would like you to illustrate the book, one of the first things you did was read the book.
Yes.
And that's very important.
Well, it helped me immensely. And I'll tell you, I mean, just the fact that it created the warmth of the, I think your words were that at her feet were the little girls.
Right.
And I thought, oh, this is so nice and cozy. And then I had to get all those children on the floor. So I said, well, how am I going to do this? So I thought it would be, what would they be doing? Familiar with a lot of grandchildren. They'd be horsing around on the floor, one on top of the other with the boys. And I think it just fell into place that they were doing what normal kids would be doing.
Right. Now, so you created the warmth that was needed in this photo.
Right.
Well, then we reached a point where Sybil is about to do, she's sitting with her mother and father by the fire.
Right.
And they're cozy, they're comfortable, and then danger strikes. And I needed an ominous painting.
Right.
And sure enough, when the messenger comes to the door, you scare the reader half to death with this guy standing in the doorway with the shadow. I loved it. And there's Sybil's mother and Sybil with her father with the musket. And you really capture the whole chapter.
Well, I'm glad you said that. One of the big things in all of your illustrations with these inside pictures were a challenge I had, and I remember discussing with my art teacher. I'm saying, you know, because I looked at all the illustrations that were done, which were not, they weren't really as they would be in that time. So he naturally said, you've got to do it the way it should be, you know. So with only the light of the candle or the fireplace in and a surrounding that's all wood and dark, it was a big challenge for me.
And the clothing of the period. You did some research to do that.
And the clothing I did on the muskets and all of that. And he would correct me if I wasn't 100%, you know, with that. But it was interesting for me. It was a great challenge. It was. I loved every minute of it.
Then then I really posed a challenge. Then after the ride, Sybil's father then had to gather all of his troops,
right,
and get them ready to go to Danbury to fight.
Right.
Well, that's a whole lot to get into one painting. I didn't know how you were going to do that.
I know.
And then, lo and behold, not only did you get all of that, but you also got Sybil and her father, and you got the warmth that's in there. And here's the father about to see the troops go. There's the mother coming. There's love, there's warmth.
Oh, yeah.
It is kid-friendly, and that's what I love about your artwork.
Well, thank you.
I knew that it was going to happen for me, and it did. The book, of course, is Sybil Ludington Ogden. You illustrated it. I loved what you did with Grandmother so much that I said needs to be the cover. So lo and behold, it is. We had a little trouble with the colors, and trying to get all that. But it finally did come together. The pictures are in here. They're full page. Now you do that. You use full page illustrations?
Well, it's easy for me to create to work on a full page. And I figured you can always crop in and about if you wanted to make a smaller picture or something. And in the storyline which you had, there was a lot to put in the pictures.
Right.
So I utilized the whole, like a rectangle.
All right, let's talk about your process.
Okay.
So now you read the book.
Yes.
And then what was the very next thing you did?
What I did is, in my mind, I had the picture already. And what I always do is I'll rough sketch. I'll sketch several different things.
And this is a rough sketch here.
Yes.
Of one of yours from Poco Uno.
Yes, it is. It's the village where I knew the characters in that were going to be Poppy the potion maker, so he's in part of the village. The cafe where they all meet, which is talked about in the story. There's Periwinkle and Thunder, and they're two good friends who they meet all the time in front of the cafe, trying to create an atmosphere so people can, or the children could envision what it looked like
So
there.
the first thing you do is pencil sketch.
I pencil sketch.
And you look at the pencil sketch and you say, that's good. Oh, wait, too big, too little.
Right, exactly. In fact, even in this one, the dog is sprawled out, with the warmth of the cobblestone, which I wanted to do. But then I changed it for the final picture. So yes, I change things. I might change the perspective or make corrections in that area. And then when I get it to be what I want, then I will use a transfer paper and I'll put it onto a watercolor. This is another sketch of the final picture, and that I did several of that had the mountains in the back, so I had to really play around with that. There was a lot going on in there too, but that's what I do this way.
Okay, so now the pencil sketch is done. Now what do you do?
I do graphite paper.
Okay.
Because the watercolor paper, which are those, you can't start erasing and doing everything. So when I make all my changes here, I'll use a graphite paper, place it on the watercolor paper, and then just carefully do the big pieces, trace them on the canvas. And then I just start painting. I do all of it, out of my head and whatever, and, work on that.
So then you have it. You have your drawing, and you say, okay, that's it.
Right.
Now what do you do? Scan?
When it is acceptable and all, and I show it to whoever, if you like it, then I'll scan it, make a JPEG. And then sometimes, like with this cover, this was one of the illustrations, you have to bring it into Adobe and do a, what would you call it, an overlay or a layer to put in your writing and play around with that it fits over the picture. And
that was some pretty serious work, trying to get it all to blend and to match. Do you ever reach a point where you look and you go, I don't like the color? And you can play with the color?
Oh, I've taken one and got it where I said, no, I'll just do another. Start all over again.
You've been to a point where you did all the pencil sketch, you did it in color, and you go,
And I put the
I don't like it.
and then I did a wash and said, oh, I just don't like this color key. And to me, it's nothing to just do another pencil thing and start all over.
Yeah, I mean, I cannot believe how quickly you did these drawings. I was amazed. I was expecting you to take a year to get this done. Yeah. And it was more like a month.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
Well, I love it. I think anything you do in life that you love it's not work. It's like I'd rather get up, even now, get up in the morning and have my coffee and
So it's
do
a labor
art.
of love.
It's a labor of love.
Good, good.
It is.
All right, so Diane Vinopoll, where do we go from here?
Well, I feel really, I'm torn because right now I am working on another writers designing a cover.
So you're doing illustrations for writers. Writers, you hear that? You need an illustrator?
I am. So I'm working on one, and I'm talking to another person about doing more. The fact that these are very similar in my mind as far as style. The reason I'm agreeing to do it is because I want to have a little challenge with different effects. These are very similar. I want to do more whimsy, a little more dramatic, just artistically. And so I'm going to do a few more of those, but I love my regular art as well.
Right.
So I'm really doing
So
that.
if a writer is interested,
Yeah.
they can go to your website.
Yes.
And they could say, Diane, will you read this?
Yes.
And do you feel a spark sometimes? I know that one of the writers from the workshop was reading a book, and you said to me later, you said, you know what? I'd love to illustrate that book. I see the drawings.
That's what happens to me. I don't know. It's just I have that kind of a mind. It's in fact, well, I know who you're talking about, and I mean, people plant or something plants a seed in my head, and I can't get it out of my head. I can envision the bird. I can envision whatever he's doing. I think it's such a colorful thing. The same thing with this cover that I'm doing. I said, you have to, I met and, you know, she told me a little bit about the story and what the things were. And then the picture started, I draw it in my head. It
develops in your head, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I put it down actually already on paper, and I think it's going to be a good cover. But it's also a different style, which I like the idea. It's a little different time frame. These are all in the colonial day, you know, the colonial days, and then this is fiction. My Poco Uno is fiction.
Now, is there going to be a Poco Uno Part 2?
Well, it's going to be a series book.
Okay.
And what happened with this Poco Uno, I mean, he is a superhero dog that transforms and all of the above. And right away, I do have follow-up stories. But one of the first I'm going to do involves more, I went off on the story and got into the king and his brother, who he discovers at the end. And the story being pretty scary that they only meet, they didn't know they had brothers. They didn't know they had brothers. They found out that their father was taken away to the land of the broken spirits because this evil power came and stole the baby when he was born. So there was a big mystery there. So the one I really feel excited about starting first is the trip the two boys are going to take to the land of the broken spirits, which will be in a very different atmosphere. It's going to be...
Now, have you started this yet? In your head?
In my head, I've started.
Pre-writing.
Yeah, I like to work out all the details in my head before I actually start putting it down on paper.
Right.
You know.
Okay. Well, it sounds very interesting. I can tell you that I am so pleased with what you did for me with the illustrations. I'm pleased with Poco Uno. Now, if we want to buy Poco Uno,
I started my new website. It's up and running. It's www.ladydiana.biz.
www.ladydiana, all one words, .biz. B-I-Z.
Yes.
And we can contact you through that.
Yes.
And that'll give us an opportunity to be in touch with you.
Yeah.
If you are a writer looking for an illustrator, Diane Vinopoll is the place to go. If you're looking for a wonderful book to read, Poco Uno, The Magical Kingdom, is another place to go. And we're going to be looking for your next book.
Right.
Diane, we cannot thank you enough for being with us today. Good luck in all of your work.
Thank you.
And as for you out there, stay tuned. We have more writers coming along. We have a lot to share. So please tune in and talk writing with us.